13 months after our first WGN Investigates report on questionable spending by South Suburban politician Tiffany Henyard, it appears she has been forced off the ballot.
Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Henyard, who was appointed to that position tonight, lost her bid for the Democratic Party's nomination in this rarely used.
Known for her larger-than-life personality and self-proclaimed title of super mayor, controversial politician Tiffany Henyard is fiercely fighting to retain her grip on power in Thornton Township and Dalton, Illinois. Henyard is at the center of a new scandal, best time over her exclusion from the Democratic ballot for township supervisor. Allegations of election tampering, voter suppression, corruption, and multiple lawsuits have fueled a firestorm of controversy. Is this the story of a determined leader standing up for justice, or a desperate attempt to cling to power amidst mounting opposition and scrutiny?
7 minutes, that's all it took for Tiffany Henyard to be out as the Democratic nominee for Thornton Township Supervisor, and she left here visibly upset.
State Senator and Township Democratic Committeeman Napoleon Harris made a bold and controversial decision to hold a caucus instead of a primary election for the first time in over 3 decades, a move widely viewed as a calculated attempt to block Tiffany Henyard's path to the Democratic nomination. This strategy paid off when Henyard's name was notably absent from the Democratic ballot, with her disqualification attributed to her slate's failure to include a certified assessor, a technicality that allowed Harris to dismiss her candidacy outright. Taking full advantage of this misstep, Harris and his slate dominated the caucus and secured the Democratic nomination for the April election, dealing a significant blow to Henyard's political aspirations and sparking heated debates about fairness and political maneuvering within the township. The decision by State Senator and Township Democratic Committeeman Napoleon Harris to hold a caucus instead of the traditional primary election sparked intense debates about fairness, procedural integrity, and his motivations. While some saw it as a legitimate use of procedural tools to uphold candidacy standards, others condemned it as a calculated power move aimed at marginalizing Tiffany Henyard's influence and derailing her ambitions. The fallout from this decision extended far beyond the caucus hall, igniting fierce discussions among residents and party members about the legitimacy of the process and its implications for local democracy. Amid accusations of political sabotage, Henyard and her supporters argued that Harris's actions were a deliberate attempt to undermine her leadership and consolidate power for his own agenda. Harris and his allies, however, defended the caucus as a necessary measure conducted in line with Democratic Party rules to restore order and credibility to local governance. With emotions running high, this contentious episode has reshaped the electoral landscape, further polarized an already divided community, and raised lasting questions about power dynamics and accountability in local politics. Tiffany Henyard's response to her disqualification from the caucus was explosive, marking a dramatic escalation in an already heated political saga. The tension hit a boiling point as Henyard, visibly furious, stormed out of the caucus meeting, leveling sharp accusations against Napoleon Harris and his allies, whom she accused of orchestrating a political coup to sabotage her career. With her voice ringing with outrage, she reportedly declared, "This is election rigging at its finest," denouncing the process as both illegal and a blatant attempt to undermine her candidacy and disenfranchise her supporters. Henyard argued that the caucus was a sham, meticulously designed to remove her from the race and suppress the will of her constituents. She characterized Harris's actions as calculated and undemocratic, painting the entire setup as a direct assault on fairness and integrity in local governance. Tiffany Henyard condemned her disqualification as a thinly veiled power grab that mocked the electoral process, a sentiment that resonated deeply with her supporters, who viewed her exclusion as a glaring injustice. Refusing to back down, Henyard vowed to fight back, declaring her intent to take legal action against those she accused of orchestrating a gross violation of democratic principles. Through fiery speeches and interviews, she framed her battle as not just a personal fight, but a crusade against a corrupt system undermining the will of the people. Her vow to sue became a rallying cry for her base, amplifying the controversy and further polarizing the community. For Henyard, this was more than a political setback. It was a fight for her survival and a defining moment in her campaign against what she described as systemic efforts to suppress her and her supporters. Her disqualification and subsequent outcry have since become central issues in the unfolding election drama. The controversy surrounding Tiffany Henyard's disqualification has sparked intense debate over the integrity and transparency of the process. Critics argue that her removal from the ballot was justified due to her failure to meet requirements, such as including a certified assessor on her slate. Supporters, however, see it as a calculated move by Napoleon Harris to consolidate power and silence opposition. Henyard's defiance has only strengthened her resolve. She has positioned herself as a defender of democracy, vowing to expose what she claims is rampant corruption and electoral malpractice. Her fiery rhetoric and determination have energized her base, even as opponents accuse her of prioritizing self-preservation over community service. The controversy has further polarized the township, with public opinion sharply divided between those who see Henyard as a champion of justice and those who view her as a polarizing figure focused on her own political survival. Tiffany Henyard's disqualification has sparked a fierce debate, casting her as either a victim of political manipulation or an opportunist avoiding accountability. Her vow to pursue legal battles threatens to deepen turmoil in the township, potentially stalling progress on pressing community issues, yet she insists these fights are crucial to uphold fairness and justice. Her fiery rhetoric and determination continue to rally supporters who view her as a fearless leader challenging a rigged system, while critics accuse her of prioritizing self-preservation over the community's interests. With her political future, reputation, and standing in the balance, Henyard's explosive reaction has transformed this local election into a high-stakes political showdown. Whether her legal efforts will restore her candidacy or further polarize the community remains uncertain, but her defiance has cemented this episode as a defining moment in the township's political history, highlighting enduring questions about fairness, power, and democracy.
Because they can't beat me. If they could beat me, they would have went to the polls. But now when I bring the people out...
The caucus held at the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium erupted into chaos, becoming a flashpoint for allegations of ballot suppression and questionable practices that have cast a dark shadow over the process. What was billed as a pivotal moment in shaping the political future of Thornton Township instead devolved into a contentious and polarizing spectacle. Tiffany Henyard, the embattled central figure in the unfolding drama, claims the chaos began long before the event officially commenced. According to Henyard, hundreds of her supporters were left waiting outside in freezing temperatures, barred from entering, and denied their right to participate. Among those affected were elderly individuals, many of whom had traveled long distances to attend, with Henyard herself arranging transportation to ensure their presence. A fleet of buses, carrying seniors and other community members, reportedly arrived slightly late to the caucus, but instead of being allowed entry or given accommodations to ensure their voices were heard, these attendees were turned away at the doors. According to Henyard, these seniors were effectively excluded from the process, left stranded outside in the cold while they watched Napoleon Harris and his slate swiftly seize control of the proceedings inside. Henyard described the restrictions on entry as draconian, claiming that even those who attempted to enter were met with stringent limitations, including being allowed entry only 2 at a time. She vehemently criticized this as a deliberate attempt to suppress turnout and manipulate the caucus outcome. Inside, the atmosphere was no less contentious. Reports from Henyard's camp describe a rushed, highly orchestrated meeting that lasted a mere 7 minutes, during which Harris and his allies wasted no time nominating their candidates. Harris and his allies quickly nominated themselves to the Democratic ticket and promptly adjourned the proceedings. Henyard argues that this brief, tightly controlled session was designed to minimize transparency and prevent any meaningful debate or opposition. The speed and manner in which the meeting unfolded have only intensified Henyard's allegations that the process was a sham intended to exclude her and her supporters. She contends that the caucus was a travesty of democratic principles, depicting a stark picture of voter disenfranchisement and backdoor dealings that prioritized power over fairness. The fact that so many were allegedly left standing outside while crucial decisions were made inside has become a central focus of her criticism, with Henyard framing the event as part of a broader effort to rig the election and silence her constituents' voices. Critics of Henyard dismiss her allegations as exaggerated and self-serving, attributing the chaos to logistical issues and procedural rules rather than any malicious intent. However, Henyard's version of the caucus, marked by accusations of disenfranchisement and rushed decisions, continues to dominate the narrative. The decisions and exclusionary practices at the caucus have struck a deep chord within Henyard's community, intensifying public outrage over what transpired that day. The fallout from the chaotic event has further deepened the political rift within Thornton Township, leaving voters polarized and raising serious questions about the integrity of the process. For Henyard and her supporters, the caucus represents not just a personal setback, but a broader attack on democratic norms and community representation, one they say cannot go unchallenged. As Henyard prepares to escalate her fight through legal avenues, her account of the events at the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium continues to resonate of a system she believes is rigged against her and her supporters. This controversial episode has ensured that the issues surrounding the caucus remain at the forefront of Thornton Township's political discourse.
The right way. Illegal.
Supporters of Tiffany Henyard have unleashed a storm of criticism against Napoleon Harris, accusing him of orchestrating the caucus to further his own agenda and secure an uncontested path to political dominance. Keith Price, a staunch ally of Henyard, described the event as the most flagrant scam he had ever witnessed, alleging that hundreds of eligible participants were unjustly excluded from the process. According to Price, this exclusion was no accident, but a calculated move to undermine Henyard's supporters and ensure Harris's slate prevailed unchallenged. This sense of disenfranchisement resonates deeply within Henyard's camp, who argue that the caucus was riddled with irregularities aimed at sidelining opposing voices. Bolstering these accusations is election lawyer Carrie Kraft-Heffer, whose analysis of the caucus uncovered significant procedural violations that have cast a shadow over its credibility. She highlighted critical lapses, such as the apparent failure to collect signed affidavits from participants, a basic safeguard meant to verify voter eligibility and protect the legitimacy of electoral processes, has raised serious concerns. Election lawyer Carrie Kraft-Heffer also pointed out other irregularities that collectively undermine the transparency and fairness expected in a democratic process. These revelations have amplified Henyard's camp's claims that the caucus was not just flawed, but deliberately structured to silence dissent and disenfranchise her supporters. Critics argue that by bypassing these safeguards, the organizers prioritized consolidating power over ensuring a legitimate outcome. Price's impassioned denouncement and Heffer's expert critique have only intensified the outrage, with Henyard's backers framing the incident as a stark example of systemic corruption. For many, it serves as a glaring reminder of how entrenched interests can manipulate the rules to their advantage, leaving ordinary citizens disillusioned and skeptical of the fairness of the system. Henyard's supporters view the caucus not just as an attack on their candidate, but as a broader assault on democratic principles. The frustration, anger, and sense of injustice felt by Henyard's allies have sparked a strong resolve to challenge what they see as a blatant subversion of fairness. In their eyes, the caucus represents a broken system in desperate need of reform, further fueling their determination to hold the organizers accountable and push for a more equitable political framework.
People were getting let in at the proper time. We had a caucus, and the people voted for us slated candidates to represent.
Some locals argue that Tiffany Henyard's allegations of voter suppression may be a calculated attempt to deflect attention from her own leadership flaws. Critics contend that Henyard had ample time to prepare for the caucus and ensure her slate met all necessary requirements, but failed to do so, calling into question her claims of unfair treatment. Detractors emphasize that following established rules does not equate to voter suppression, and Henyard's failure to adhere to these standards reflects poorly on her organizational and leadership abilities. Adding to the skepticism are accusations that she improperly used township resources, such as arranging transportation for voters who ultimately couldn't participate due to non-compliance. This logistical shortcoming undermines her accusations of bias and deliberate exclusion, painting a picture of disorganization rather than systemic disenfranchisement. One outspoken local resident remarked that the absence of a completed slate was entirely her responsibility. Critics argue that Tiffany Henyard's responsibility for the procedural mishaps highlights that these issues resulted from negligence rather than conspiracy. These criticisms are further fueled by her contentious track record, which includes allegations of misusing township assets for personal and political gain, creating a credibility gap in her narrative of being a victim. For many observers, her claims of an unjust process seem hollow against the backdrop of her own administrative controversies. Instead of focusing on procedural shortcomings, critics suggest Henyard should acknowledge her lapses in strategy and accountability, as her allegations do little to bolster confidence in her leadership. To her detractors, the chaos surrounding the caucus is a symptom of deeper issues with her leadership style, casting doubt on her ability to effectively represent her constituents while upholding fairness and transparency. These conflicting views underscore the polarizing nature of Henyard's political career, as residents wrestle with questions about her capability and integrity amidst her vocal claims of injustice. RSM. Her opponents accuse Tiffany Henyard of alienating the community with her confrontational rhetoric and questionable decisions, with the caucus controversy reigniting discussions about her polarizing leadership style. While Henyard's supporters continue to vocally believe that her exclusion from the ballot is part of a larger conspiracy to remove her from power, they argue that Harris and his allies purposefully manipulated the caucus rules to block her candidacy, knowing she remains popular among certain voter groups. However, locals have noted that her frequent public outbursts, such as calling Harris a coward and accusing him of a hostile takeover, do little to inspire confidence in her ability to lead. Silencing a leader who has done more for this community than anyone else is the goal here, not just the caucus, said one supporter. There is still uncertainty over whether Henyard has enough backing to mount a significant write-in campaign, or whether the damage to her reputation has been too severe to overcome. However, Harris has denied these claims, asserting that the caucus was conducted in a lawful and equitable manner, with the procedure followed correctly and the results as expected. He defended a decision to hold a caucus, explaining that while Thornton Township may not have held one in a long time, many other townships in Illinois have done so. If you don't receive the Democratic Party's nomination tonight, what will you do? You will see that in spite of Harris's promises, "My people are here and will not go. I will win tonight," Henyard declared. Meanwhile, Henyard's legal team is preparing to challenge the outcome in court, arguing that the rules were arbitrarily applied and that her expulsion was premeditated. The fallout from the caucus has been significant, with many in the community applauding Henyard's expulsion for months, while she battles to return to the race. Tiffany Henyard, the mayor of Dolton and supervisor of Thornton Township, has come under heavy criticism for her alleged corruption and controversial leadership style. She has been accused of embezzling taxpayer funds for lavish personal expenses and engaging in politically motivated retaliation against her opponents. One particularly damning report revealed that Henyard used the village credit card to rack up over $30,000 in Amazon purchases in a single day and spent nearly $100,000 on travel, meals, and other questionable charges. She has even been labeled the worst mayor in America by some, with calls for her resignation. The disputes surrounding her leadership don't end there. Under her tenure, Dolton's finances plunged into a multi-million-dollar deficit, and her time as mayor has been marked by instability and dysfunction. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was recruited to investigate Dolton's financial condition, noted the village's severe financial situation. Lightfoot's initial assessment revealed that Dolton's general fund balance plummeted from over $5 million to a deficit of approximately $4 million. The investigation also uncovered instances of police officers receiving excessive overtime pay, with one officer earning more than twice their annual salary in just 2 years.